Watching Arise America, welcome back. Now, President Donald Trump marked his 79th birthday with the largest U.S. military parade in decades, showcasing tanks, aircraft, and troops in Washington. The event, meant to honor the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, drew sharp criticism from nationwide protesters who accused Trump of embracing authoritarian theatrics. Trump praised the United States as the hottest country in the world and avoided his usual political rhetoric in a brief address that celebrated the military's strength. But the parade came amid deepening turmoil, with tear gas deployed against protesters in Los Angeles and fresh missile exchanges between Israel and Iran, intensifying concerns about U.S. entanglement abroad. Trump used the occasion to issue a stern warning to adversaries, vowing total and complete defeat to any threat. Has he?
States of America. Spirit of the revolution through more than 500 performances each year, both at home and around the world too.
Because the Army keeps us free, you make us strong, and tonight you have made all Americans very proud. They're watching from all over the world, actually. Made them all very proud. Every other country celebrates their victories. It's about time America did too. That's what we're doing tonight. And watching this magnificent display, our souls are filled with gratitude for every generation of warriors who have worn the uniform all the way back to the very beginning. Today we commemorate an event that did not just change American history, but changed the history of the entire world. With the creation of America's Army on June 14th, 1775, liberty got its shield and the freedom got its sword. The U.S. Army has driven bayonets into the heart of sinister empires, crushed the ambitions of evil tyrants. Beneath the threads of American tanks, it's done so well, it's done so much, and sent the devil himself flying into full retreat. Time and again, America's enemies have learned that if you threaten the American people, our soldiers are coming for you. Your defeat will be certain, your demise will be final, and your downfall will be total and complete.
And happy birthday, Mr. President. But I would get in trouble if I didn't mention that it's also my wedding anniversary. And so to my lovely wife, I love you, honey. Happy anniversary. And thank you for everything that you do for our country.
Well, the U.S. Army parachute team wowed wild spectators with a dramatic demonstration jump over the nation's capital, marking the Army's 250th birthday in high-flying fashion. The aerial performance took place on June 14, 2025, as part of the Army's milestone celebration and birthday parade in Washington, D.C. The event honored the Army's founding in 1775 and pay tribute to generations of service members who have defended the nation for a quarter of a millennium. Joining me now to further discuss the parade in the U.S. and reactions from that Army parade is Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. He joins us from London. Good to have you, Marek. First, critics say the parade yesterday was a waste of taxpayers' money, especially when Trump is all about cost-cutting government.
Yes, in America, there is this streak which dislikes government money being spent on projects like this, which of course, are in some way just personal vanity because it's his own birthday. However, President Donald Trump is correct in saying that other nations do, of course, have such parades. And it is the 250th anniversary, so that's quite understandable. The worrying aspects of it are that simply America doesn't do this sort of thing usually, and Donald Trump has made several bellicose threats recently, and so there is a worry that this sort of parade may be the harbinger of worse events. But per se, as he stated, the 250th anniversary, it's certainly time for America to have a parade, since it hasn't had one for some time, some decades, in fact.
So is it justifiable then, being that a lot of Americans are not happy? Is like you say you want to cut costs, but then you spend millions and millions of dollars to organize such a parade. It runs into a lot of money.
Yes, quite right. There is this aspect to it. America is, of course, a strange country with its deficit, a deficit which is so high, it will cripple other nations. But America carries on because dollars are reserve currency, of course, amongst other things. Yes, many people would see it financially in that sense. However, the actual amount spent is quite small compared to this enormous debt. And therefore, in that sense, the fact it's been spent symbolizes for many people some profligacy. However, I repeat, the 250th anniversary is certainly very rare, and the American military, from that point of view, deserves a parade. But of course, there is this cost aspect, and also the worrying aspect that parades are usually done by countries like communist Russia. And of course, Nazi Germany had parades as well.
The issue here is prioritizing what money should be spent on. Now, what is your assessment of the No Kings protest held in Washington, D.C. and the handling by the administration? Remember, he said a few days ago that protesters will not be allowed. As a matter of fact, the clip just before you came on, he also addressed the issue of protesters as well.
Yes, quite. The point here is that there are worries, and this stretches right from the beginning of Donald Trump's second presidency, that he is simply overstepping his mark. And this sort of parade, which is indeed reminiscent, say, of communist Russia and other dictatorships, is a worrying feature. And so the No Kings reminds Donald Trump that this is a Republican. He's a Republican Party, and he's in charge of a democracy. And one of the reasons why 1775 the whole army was set up was precisely not to have a king, in that case King George III, as opposed to present-day King Charles III in England, as their monarch. So yes, the protests are entirely understandable from that point of view. And in fact, they do echo in American hearts, I think, which is why on this issue, the protests were quite widespread. However, it is a one-off occasion. Assuming it is a one-off occasion, then I don't expect to go any further.
How do you think Trump is also handling protests in the U.S.? He made, some comments like I mentioned, and also the deployment of the National Guards to L.A. just a couple of days ago. He also has used protests in his administration to send his, body language or message, however you want to look at it, to the world and to Americans. So it's sort of contradictory, Marek.
Yes, there is an aspect here which, as you rightly say, America, the democracy, and America suddenly sending in National Guard. What is quite clear is his policies right from the word go were divisive, and there are a great many protests, and they appear to be growing. At some point, this doesn't appear to be the case, but they certainly are growing. His policy abroad was bad enough in many people's eyes, but now his policy within, separating families, shipping people out, has certainly annoyed some people. Well, the key to the situation is actually the polls, in the sense that they figure out what the support is. As far as it can be seen, Donald Trump still has majority support for his policies, including his immigration one, and therefore these protests, vociferous as they are, widespread as they are, per se, right now, are not going to change anything. The worry is, of course, for President Trump, is America is a country where protests in the end did manage to change government policy. I'm thinking here of the Vietnam War, where the initial protests were rather like these, certainly not enough to bring down the policy of the government to carry on then fighting the Vietnam War. But in the end, yes, it did count. But again, truth be told, There's the cost of the Vietnam War as well. And likewise, should Donald Trump get involved in any foreign entanglement, as you put it, there would be the problem. But the protests are, I think, worrying, but certainly under control, and at this point in time, not decisive in any way.
We have state laws and we have the federal laws. Just before I let you go, Doc, we have the state laws, we have the, federal laws, just like the case in California, LA, where, the protects immigrants, and the federal law seems to contradict with state laws. In such instances, how, is the same entity or country expect to work and flow? Because most times fingers are thrown at the governors of such state, but they are also guarded by their own constitution.
Yes, the fact of the matter is the American whole legal system is full of such contradictions that it's got several tiers to it, and one tier can be in conflict to another. The Americans are quite happy to live with such contradictions and resolve them as and when they appear. The key point is that President Donald Trump ordered in the National Guard, whereas the local government did not want this. Now, this is an exact example of what this No Kings was about that we mentioned just a second ago. Moreover, there is another aspect to it. He appears to be equally gauche in his handling of internal protests as he does in the world stage. He seems to lack some sort of subtlety, and it was unnecessary and actually quite provocative as far as one can tell looking from the outside. He should have held back, and the fact he hasn't done has meant that the protests which now are on the street about Donald Trump, he to some extent has actually generated these protests with his, if you like, brutal policy, which was at the end of the day right now unnecessary.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, for joining us all the way from London. He's international affairs analyst. Now,